Hi, my name is Lily and welcome back to my channel and welcome to a video all about the books I want to read this winter. So there'll be lots of different reasons for these books, and some of them are going to be like Christmassy books, some of them aren't, but basically these are just books that I want to read in the winter season, and yeah, there's not much else to say. I will explain each of them in turn, and when I say winter I don't just mean December, I mean like from December all the way through to February. So first up we have Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend, and I've been meaning to read this for a really long time. I was hoping to read it during spooky season in like October and early November, but I just never felt the urge to read it. I was on a real romance kick then, but I'm really hoping to read this. I'm hoping maybe between Christmas and New Year. This feels like definitely an autumnal wintry read. I've been told there's a really good section of it that's set at Christmas. So yeah, I am really looking forward to reading this one, and I'm trying to remember what this is about, but I don't remember, so I'm just going to look at the blurb and then come back to you. So this one is about Morrigan Crow, who is destined to die on her 11th birthday, but at the strike of midnight she's taken away by a mysterious man and offered to join this like magical society, and but only if she can pass 4 different tests. So it's a middle grade, it is a fantasy, and it sounds absolutely incredible, and I really want to read it soon. Next, I really want to read the second Frost Hat book called Escape to Aurora by Jamie Littler, and honestly I just want to read this because I really want to finish the Frost Hat series this year, or this winter I guess, and I am really looking forward to getting to it. I won't tell you what the second book is about because I don't want to give spoilers for the first book, but the first book is about this polar world where there's a young boy named Ash who is an orphan and has been taken in by this village who live quite remotely, and he is a song weaver, which means he's able to communicate with these monsters that live outside of the compounds that people live in. And people find that very suspicious because they believe that song weavers could get taken over by the monsters and help them to infiltrate and kill people. And at one point in the book he ends up getting banished and taken on this travelling sledge which goes around and has this whole like pirate crew kind of, and they go around trading with all the different villages and camps. And yeah, it is a really fun, a really great wintry read. It's another middle grade fantasy, so it's another really easy read that I think I'm probably going to try and read between Christmas and New Year. Next is The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell, and I am actually currently reading this. I'm about, I think I'm halfway through? Yeah, I'm about halfway through already, so I am already reading it this winter. But I wanted to include it because I wanted to include it in one of my wintry videos, and I don't want to include it in my recommendation video when I haven't finished it. So this one is a really interesting fantasy. It reads a bit like a young adult fantasy, but the characters are not teenagers. So it's one of those books that you can read if you like a young adult or adult fantasy. It's definitely one of those in between, a bit like The House in the Cerulean Sea. It reads a bit like that kind of style. This is about 2 women, Rosa and Beatrice. It's set in a Victorian era Britain mostly, and basically Beatrice's mother died when she was a child, and she was very distressed when her mother died and refused to like say goodbye to her, refused to read her mother's goodbye letter, and when she was really distressed that night she discovers something called the Winter Garden. She gets invited to visit, and it's this magical garden full of amazing wonders, and it comes back every night for 7 days and then it disappears. And she thinks about it, but no one ever believes her that it happened and that it was real, even though she brought back apples from this garden and planted them, and she has these amazing magical trees in her garden. So that is like our prologue, and then at the beginning of the actual story, her father has died and she is needing to get married so that she can be respectable in society. And she's being set up with this duke. He's basically the next best thing to marrying into the royal family, but she feels like something is wrong. She doesn't love him, she doesn't want to marry him, and she thinks that she actually might just want to be a spinster and explore the world in hopes of finding the Winter Garden again. So that's what she decides to do. Then we have her best friend Rosa. She is an American who has come over to Britain hoping to marry well. She has come from a very poor family that has worked their way up, so she is new money, but she wants to marry into old money. So she, after finding out about the breakup between Beatrice and her fiancé, decides that maybe she needs to start making moves on this fiancé because he is such an eligible bachelor. She actually has to turn down a proposal from a mutual friend between Rosa and Beatrice. She ends up with the guy and things aren't quite what they seem. And the guy didn't turn out to be as nice as she thought he was going to be. And Rosa and Beatrice both get letters telling them that there is going to be a competition, and whoever can build or whoever can create the most magical, amazing pleasure garden in Britain will win a wish with the last of the winter garden's magic. So they both decide to compete. But they know that they will have to give up the most magical part of their garden if they win. And basically it is this story about female friendship, about competition, and it is so amazing. I'm loving it so far. It is really, really good. I am loving it. The magic is amazing because it's just kind of blended into the world. It's not treated as something like really unusual. It is so interesting. And like their friend, who I think his name is James, he is an orchid hunter, so he travels the world catching and collecting and growing very rare orchids which are very valuable in this society. And yeah, it is just so good. It's very wintry, very magical, and it's definitely one that I would recommend like reading when you're cozied up in front of like a fire with a hot chocolate and you're like ready to sit down for a couple of evenings to read a really, really good light fantasy. And yeah, that's pretty much my plan for the next few evenings, is I'm going to do that so that I can read it, because I am just loving this book and it's amazing. Next, of course, if you've not been on BookTube and you haven't heard of this one, where have you been? It is Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kusnia. So this one is a Nutcracker retelling. I've never read the Nutcracker. I don't really know the story. I think the closest I've ever got to is watching Barbie and the Nutcracker as a child, and I don't remember the story of that movie either, so this should be a good read for me. So this one is about a ballet dancer named Marietta, who she's just an amazing ballet dancer basically, and a new man who moves in next door. He is a toy maker and he brings magic and wonder into her life. He agrees to help her make a set for her final ballet performance on Christmas Eve, because in the new year she's expected to marry and give up ballet. But basically she finds out that this set has magic imbued in it that she could never have imagined. She finds herself transported to Everwood, a magical land that she is stuck in, and she must try and find her way out and make it home to her family. This sounds amazing. I've heard really, really good things about it. I really, really am looking forward to this one. I know it sounds weird, but like I remember Barbie and the Nutcracker being one of the films I adored as a child, so I am really looking forward to reading this one. I have high hopes for it. The next one isn't necessarily a wintry read, it's just one that feels like it would be nice to read in the winter, and that is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. So this one is, I can't remember if it's a retelling as well, but it is one of those stories where they have taken the bad guy and given them their own book to see if we can see whether they're actually a bad guy. It's about Vanya, who I think it says is the adopted daughter of Death. And she basically works as a servant for this princess. The people who adopted her basically say that they want her to pay them back for all of the care they gave her. So she decides to basically swap places with the princess and to take over her life. So she uses a magical string of pearls to take Princess Giselle's place and live in her society. And basically what happens is that she then has to live this double life of being a princess but also being a jewel thief, so that she can amass enough money to pay off her debts and escape. When she's one heist away from freedom, she accidentally crosses the wrong god, who curses her to turn into jewels one by one. And she has to try and reverse it. And she has other people trying to hunt her down as well, because they know she's not Giselle. And yeah, it sounds really good, and it sounds one of those fantasies that feels just kind of dark and brooding, and those are the kind of fantasies I like to read in the winter. This is another one that isn't wintry but feels like this is a good time of year to be reading it, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I actually pre-ordered this. This is the Goldsboro special edition, and I was really excited to read it, but there was just so much hype around it, I've been too intimidated to read it. But this one is about a young woman who ends up in the Midnight Library, which is a space between life and death, and she basically has lived this life of misery and regret, and she really regrets every choice she's basically ever made. And the Midnight Library's books basically give her the opportunity to relive her life without making those bad choices, and to like undo all of her own regrets. But as she does this, she realises she's putting things in danger and things aren't as she had hoped they would be. And it's a book about regret and about whether or not we can really truly live the perfect life. And I really think the end of the year is a really good time to read this kind of book, because it's when you're reflecting on your past year and when you're reflecting on what you're wanting to do next year. So I think this would be a really good time for me to read this book. And the final book I want to read is A Winter's Promise by Christelle de Boer. This is translated from French, so I apologise if I am getting the name wrong. This is the first book in the Mirror Visitor Quartet, and I just am really excited to give this one a go because I've heard such mixed things, but it's such a beautiful book that I felt like I should give it a go. And basically this is about a young woman named Ophelia who has two magical powers. When she touches an object, she can see its past, and she can also travel through mirrors. She's living quite a quiet and unremarkable existence with her family, and then one day she gets promised to marry this man from another area, and she has to go to this court where he lives, and she basically finds out that she's part of a political manoeuvring, and there's a lot going on, and it's hard to explain without having read the book. It's quite a vague premise, but it's about her trying to unpick the political goings on and trying to understand how this is going to affect the rest of her world. And it's meant to be quite wintry. The setting is wintry, and yeah, I really want to read it. I'm hoping to read this one while I'm off for Christmas, because it feels like one of those books that I really need to sit down, concentrate on, and maybe read in quite big chunks. So those are all of the books that I want to read this winter. Well, not all of the books, just some of the books. But yeah, those are some of the books I want to read this winter that I am very excited for. Let me know in the comments if you have any books in particular that you're looking forward to reading this winter, or if there's any that you tend to go back to every year. And also keep an eye out for my recommendations of books that you should read this winter. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to see more content from me. All of my social media are down in the links below. Yeah, if you want to leave me a comment to let me know you're here, leave me a snowman emoji in the comments below. Thank you again for watching. Bye!